And welcome back to the Sportsmemo College Football Every Game on the Board podcast. Right now, the guest is Teddy Covers. Follow him on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. Teddy, welcome into the podcast.
Hey, great to be here, Drew. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing good. We got a good one. The middle portion of this weekend's college football card. We'll start off at 139-140, Ohio versus Virginia. Teddy, some location issues here with the hurricane affecting this. We got 54 the total. Virginia now laying 3.5. I believe this one's in Nashville. What do you got on Ohio, Virginia?
Yeah, exactly. The game has been moved from Charlottesville to Vanderbilt Stadium in Nashville. And what does that mean? That means nobody's going. It goes from a home game to a nobody game for Virginia. That's a significant impact for the Cavs, who are certainly still a very young team in Bronco Mendenhall's third season. Now, Virginia's been pretty good getting the money. They certainly got the money for me last week at Indiana. And this is a game, for a squad. Bronco Mendenhall's like, we went to a bowl last year, and they were 2-10 the year before, 4-8, 5-7. It's been a while since Virginia was steadily competitive. Back-to-back bowls, more than a decade. And Bronco's like, we're going bowling this year. And the ACC media didn't seem to think that. And the loss to Indiana last week certainly hurts their chances. This is the game where Virginia has to win. Last week they were supposed to win. This week they have to win if they're going to go bowling. So one would think the attention will be there. I like the quarterback, Perkins. I really do. But worth noting, Ohio is off a bye. They've got the veteran quarterback, second-year MAC kid Rourke from last year. The offensive line returned 4 starters. They got 3 fifth-year seniors. And in theory, they're supposed to be able to run the football against Virginia's defensive line. Indiana was able to run the football against Virginia last week. So there's a case to be made for the underdog here, even though I happen to think the favorite is most assuredly the better of these two teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia comes with what they're supposed to do if Virginia wins this game by margin.
Yeah, Teddy, just real quick, because I'm with you. I like this Virginia program as well. I believe the number before it was announced it was switched. The location was 5.5. Now it's 3.5. Would you agree with that being a 2-point difference as far as it being in Vanderbilt Stadium now?
So my powering number was 6.5. The opener, and again, I don't write down the very first opener because multiple books open at multiple spots, and I'm not trying to say Wynn's numbers are better than Chris's numbers, or Chris's numbers are better than Westgate. No, or Penny's numbers are no. So I wait for a couple hours after the lines get posted, and I call my first consensus. I'll do it either late Sunday night, first thing Monday morning, and my number for Virginia was 6 at that time. The current number of 3 is a 3-point move off of that, 3.5, and frankly, I would say it's worth that. Yeah, playing a awful loss, playing in front of your home crowd against a team you're supposed to beat, versus playing in front of nobody, hundreds of miles from home, while your hometown is being besieged by floods. That's worth at least 3 points.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I read an article where it will be free. It's free to go to the game there at Vanderbilt Stadium.
Of course it is. There's still nobody showing up.
Yeah.
Take the under. I'm not even sure if this game's on TV. Of course, they're all on TV now. Let me see. Oh, it's on ESPN too. They won't be doing any crowd shots. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. No, good one. We got 141, 142, SMU, Michigan, 53.5 the total. Looks like the Wolverines laying 35.5 or 36 at home. You think SMU can stay within this large number, Teddy?
Gee, I'm not really excited about either side here. I liked Michigan last week. We used the Wolverines as a free play, and they turned out to be pretty darn easy in the blowout over Western Michigan. But now, and this is a theme, you're going to hear me say this about 10 times on the podcast. Maybe not 10, but 5 times on the podcast today, which is beware the spot. Okay, team coming off a blowout win, another low-profile opponent here, conference opener next, and or team off a big game, low-profile opponent here, conference opener next. These are there are many flat spots in week 3 in college football. I worry about the Wolverines versus SMU in that regard. And the one thing that SMU can do, the back door is open for that team. They're going to chuck the football around. It's how they're built. And of course, the QB fine. He's all right. He can chuck the ball around. We had a rough second half against TCU last week. And, of course, when it comes to winning the game, look, Michigan should be able to hand the ball off, get 8 yards of carry like they did last week, and do whatever they want. But the level of execution is a concern here. The back doors are a concern here, especially in this lofty point spread range.
And Teddy, as a Michigan grad, is the fan base, the boosters and all, kind of getting frustrated here with Harbaugh?
Nobody. Okay. How do I phrase this? When we look at the state of college football, okay, and we see, Michigan had Rich Rod, and we had Brady Hoke. Michigan's not going to get a better coach than Jim Harbaugh. Okay, there's nobody out there, and the program isn't what it was. And Ohio State gets every recruit out of Ohio. Michigan's battling with Michigan State for every recruit. They're at a structural disadvantage in some regards. Harbaugh's the savior. Harbaugh will get, I don't know if he gets 10 years. They signed him for a 10-year deal. I don't know if he gets 10 years to beat Ohio State, but there's no heat on the guy yet. No real heat in any sense, like, he's going to lose his job, because there's nowhere else for Michigan to go. It's Harbaugh's job to sink or swim.
Well said. We got Southern Mississippi, App State postponed. We'll skip it. We got 145, 146. Boise, Oklahoma State. I'll tell you, Teddy, this is kind of a intriguing matchup here. A good one. 64.5, 2.5 Oklahoma State laying it home. Any opinion here on Boise State, Oklahoma State?
Yeah, this is a good card this week. There's a lot of good games. And that's what, that's the best. One of the many things we love about college football is that, some random week in September, here's a great marquee matchup, a non-conference affair. All right, so there are two questions to ask here. The first is Oklahoma State rebuild or reload. You lose your quarterback, you lose your stud wideout, Washington. Man, that guy was a stud for the Cowboys. There is, significant graduation losses on the defense, offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. So we ask ourselves, is this an Ohio State? Is this an Oklahoma where everybody graduates? Doesn't matter. The next group of recruits are just as good. When we look at the program, look at the wins over the last 10 years. 9, 9, 11, 12, 8, 10, 7, 10, 10, and 10. That's 9 wins or more 8 times in the last 10 years. In the 2 rebuilding seasons, they win 8 and 7 games. This program is reloading. And the market certainly don't like the quarterback, Taylor Cornelius, the senior. He's a former walk-on, and, walk-on, horrors. The kid can chuck the football around. So the rebuild versus reload for Oklahoma State is the question. The other question is, how good is Boise? All right, this is a Broncos team that has, number one, this is absolutely their most important game of the season. If they win here, they are on track to go undefeated this year and to be in contention for a BCS bowl or whatever, the marquee bowl games. Boise would absolutely be in contention for that if they win out, but this is the game they have circled on their schedule. But from a point spread perspective, here's Boise, and I'm telling you, the Troy team they beat in week 1, we talked about that game. Drew, I said, Troy's not ready. You read the quotes from the coach, they're not ready, and Boise went in and smacked them. And then Boise played a crappy UConn. What have UConn have 9 freshmen starting on defense, either redshirt frosh or true frosh, and Boise smacked them. So they beat 2 pretty bad teams, and they smacked them good. So, the plus 6.5, well, guess what? Now it's plus 2.5, Instead of getting a touchdown, you're getting less than a field goal. And not that Boise can't win these games, but you know what? They used to win these games in the Chris Peterson era. Brian Harsin era hasn't been quite so good for Boise when stepping up in class. They have not gotten the job done in this role in recent seasons, including last year's loss at Washington State, where they blew that big lead, ended up losing in double OT.
Yeah, Teddy, hats off to you on that Troy call. I remember that one. Also for Boise, Brett Rippon, 73% against 2, subpar opponents, 7 touchdowns, 0 picks. Cornelius did have 2 picks just last week against South Alabama, so not playing too well. But, Teddy, I do have a stat I want to throw out to you and get your opinion. Last 5 years as a home favorite, Oklahoma State just 10, 11, and 1 straight up. Is there something to that as far as them having trouble winning when they're supposed to win in Stillwater?
10, 11, straight up?
Last 5 years as a home favorite, 10, 11, and 1. Yes.
I got to check those numbers. I'm not buying it.
Okay. All right.
I'm flat out not buying it. They lost to Oklahoma I guess they were -2 against Oklahoma last year. They lost to Kansas State as chalk last year, 19.5-point favorites. They lost to TCU. They were 11-point favorites last year. They had one loss in 2000. Well, whatever. I'm not going to go through it right now. It's a number that I wasn't aware of and surprises me, and I'm not convinced that it's real.
Okay.
It's not real.
It isn't real.
It might be real because, again,
I feel like we need to make sure it's real. So if it's not real, we can fix it for the listener.
But again, you find these trends. So how have they done as home dogs then? And there's a bunch of games lined at -3 or -1 or +2, and those games when you look at them in somebody's game log 4 years later, you don't remember if that was really the point spread. But with all of these games, be aware of that some of the trends are based on some dicey
numbers,
dicey data. I'll just put it that way. I take every trend that I see like that. I always go back and check with my numbers because I don't believe a lot of them.
Okay. No, and that makes sense. Somebody definitely could have been doing some fudging. It was in an article I read, I believe, out of the Boise State paper, so we'll see. We got 147, 148, BYU, Wisconsin, 46 the total. Looks like Whiskey laying 22 at home.
And one thing I really want to bring up here, because we're seeing a lot of mainstream networks talk about gambling openly for the first time this year. And what we're seeing is, we're not going to call it fake news, but it's fake news. It's there's bad information. There's no nuance. People don't check numbers. There's a ton of bad inflow floating out there, and a bunch of bettors who haven't bet, or a bunch bettors who new bettors who haven't been involved in the process. What do you want? You want clicks. You want headlines. Oh my God! Look at this trend. Look at that trend. Beware of betting. Coaching trends matter. Team trends for college football. They only last as long as the coach does. Now, Wisconsin, BYU, I'll tell you what. Worth noting, the Badgers, last week, they're up by 24. They punch in a touchdown on a pass with 22 seconds left. They're supposed to take a knee in that spot, and they didn't, which is something that's absolutely worth noting. Boy, this team throttled BYU. I mean, this was a pretty embarrassing game last year. For the Cougs because they were physically manhandled. They lost at home 40-6 in that contest. I'm not convinced it was that close. And the advantage that BYU has. Remember, the majority of the players on that team have come back from missions. They're bigger, they're older, they're more mature, they're stronger. That works against teams that can't match their physicality. It doesn't necessarily work against a team like Wisconsin. That being said, the Badgers are yet to cover a number this season. They're laying another big chalk number here, and I don't know that I trust Wisconsin big playability to put the biscuit in the basket. But boy, Mangum is not a QB I'm excited about for BYU. Again, last week showed why he is, he's never really developed off the promise that he showed from his freshman season.
Teddy, we move on to West Virginia, North Carolina State. Never mind, that one's postponed, correct? That's what you have?
Correct. That is canceled for this week. There's 5 games as of now that have been canceled. We talked about the Virginia-Ohio game that's been moved. There are other games where the time has changed. They've moved the game up or back, like Georgia Southern Clemson. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes.
Interesting. Even with these big-name teams, you think they'll be able to reschedule some of these?
I don't know. Of all the things that I'm working on, trying to figure out what team schedules are, it's very low on my priority list. Give me a game, tell me when it's going to be, I'll handicap it, but don't ask me to predict when the athletic directors are going to figure this stuff out. It's hard to say how many of these games will end up getting rescheduled. The conference games more likely to be rescheduled than non-conference games, and I believe all of the ones that were canceled are non-conference affairs.
All right, Teddy, I got one for you. 3:30 Saturday, 151, 152, Miami of Ohio at Minnesota, 46.5. Looks like Minnesota laying 12.5 at home.
3:30? What time zone are you talking about, man? The Vegas. Okay, we live in a Vegas world. Vegas is on the Pacific coast, and this is a 12:30 Pacific start. Miami and Minnesota on the Big Ten Network. 2 teams I have a hard time trusting. I watched my Minnesota last week against Fresno. They weren't the better team. They blew that game in the fourth quarter. Couldn't hold on, and then kind of, things broke right for them. I'll just put it that way, to end up winning by a TD. But, there was no difference between them and Fresno on the field, and that's a concern here. That being said, Miami's coming off a pretty bad loss to their biggest non-conference rival in Cincy. They haven't looked good in either of their first two ball games. The offense isn't working, and the defense can't. More than basically the offense isn't working. They got shut out last week. Not that the Bearcats can't play D, but Miami has not moved the football. So it's too. I don't trust the Gophers to lay in this range. I don't really like this Miami O team very much, and I think the markets are a little bit high on them. So for me, it was an easy pass, not a game that I put a lot of time into.
Okay, Teddy, with your time comment here, an East Coast guy question for a West Coast guy because it's an SEC team. Do you refer to the CBS SEC game as the 12:30 Saturday SEC game?
I don't refer to it as it's 12:30 game. Yeah, the 12:30 game. Yes.
Okay. LSU at Auburn looks like 44.5. The number, it's CBS at 12:30 in the afternoon Pacific time. Auburn now bet up to 10-point home favorites. What's your feel on this one, Teddy?
Yeah, I mean, look, Auburn in revenge. They blow a 20-point lead last year against LSU, thanks to Stidham. I mean, Stidham was awful in that game. 9 of 28 passing in that contest. They ended up losing 27-23. LSU wins straight up as a 7-point dog. Year before, Auburn 18-13. They were the dog in that game. The year before that, LSU wins straight up. So this point spread is certainly not in line with the recent series history. The recent series history has been LSU and underdogs. And it's been a while since Auburn's been able to blow out LSU in a matchup of Tigers versus Tigers. Now the question, of course, what do we think about Joe Burrow, the Ohio State transfer, who's now LSU starting quarterback? We saw him in the opener. And LSU, I mean, all they've had is game managers at quarterback and dink and dunkers at quarterback for, it feels like forever. It's been a while. But against Miami in the opener, here's Burrow chucking the ball around against a pretty good defense. They can certainly run the football. Brissett's, 6.4 yards a carry so far. And it's an LSU team that, yes, they graduated a lot on defense, but make no mistake about it. When it comes to reloading, the defensive front is loaded, the secondary is loaded. And that's also worth noting that Orgeron's been pretty good as an underdog.
He's been pretty good against the spread in all roles, really.
He sure has, but as a dog in particular, I've got him cashing each of his last 4 tries in that role, whereas Auburn, under Malzahn, playing as chalk at Jordan-Hare, I've got him at 4 covers the last 16 tries under Malzahn. They have not been particularly good in this role.
Interesting, those stats, Teddy, because I'll tell you, with this rivalry, home team has won the last 5, 16 of the last 18, and ATS-wise, 8-1 the last 9 games. I mean, the home team in this, we both know that both of these home advantages are 2 of the tops in college football. But with your numbers against those numbers for the home teams, it's kind of like a clash of just 2 differing numbers, really.
Well, last year, LSU was the underdog, and they won straight up. 2 years ago, Auburn was the underdog, and they won straight up. Though LSU wins and covers as a favorite in 2015, and Auburn wins and covers as a favorite in 2014, so already your numbers are crap.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll just move on here. South Florida, Illinois, 10. South Florida's laying on the road, 59 the total. Go ahead with it.
Yeah, and crap's not the right. Again, just check your numbers and beware that there's all kinds of discrepancies all over the place. And it's easier. If you're looking for trends, you will find trends. Okay? They're out there. They exist. Whether they're meaningful for any particular game is another question entirely. South Florida, Illinois. Hey, man, you want some Illinois here?
I don't want anything to do with Illinois.
I remember watching the game last year, and it was man among boys. It really was 47-23. South Florida won that game, and I mean, it really, it didn't feel like it was that close. The game, 680 yards of offense, 300 on the ground, 300 through the air. It really wasn't a problem. And here's Illinois. They're feeling good about themselves. got a couple of wins to open this season. I believe there is a class difference between these two teams when it comes to speed. And we're not, oh my God, a Big Ten team getting outclassed by USF. Yes. Blake Barnett, the Alabama transfer QB, is far better than anyone that Lovie Smith has on his roster at quarterback. And of course, AJ Bush hurt his hamstring last week. Could be the true Frosh. I don't know if he's a true. I think he's a redshirt Frosh. MJ Miles getting the start here. That's why we've seen a little bit of USF money, and I certainly agree with that money. The Bulls are on my short list.
And yeah, I just went back and checked the Auburn LSU. You're right; they're all around the number, especially the last 2 years. So you could have it as they lost both, but really at Auburn, I'm showing a -3, and they lost 13-18, which is obviously 5 points. So it depends if you would go by the closing, opening, or if you're just cherry picking some in the middle. You're right, Teddy. You got to really look back at what these numbers really mean.
And look, okay, let's be very clear. All right, at the close, and remember I talk about it taking consensus at the opening number.
Yeah.
I take consensus as my closing number when I track my closing number as well, because what you often see is right before kickoff, the big bettors are getting down big bets at Chris and at Penny, and those two lines tend to be more off-market when you look at the closers, even though they're only off-market for the last 5 minutes before kickoff. So you see off-market numbers in the closing numbers for a site like Bookmaker that a lot of people use as that's the one, or Penny is that's the one, and many times those are numbers that really weren't ever bettable. They were bettable for, one guy bet him 5 minutes before kickoff, or one syndicate bet him 5 minutes before kickoff. That's how the number got down to 21.5, and everywhere else it closed 23. That happens more often than you think.
Yeah, no, thanks for explaining that. And, we learn something all the time, and go back and check because, you could make it sound a lot better than it really is because, you got 3 or 4 really close games that go around the number, and you're cherry picking which book at which time. Sure. It can get a little fuzzy.
We live in a clickbait world, okay? I do a show every day, Sports Bit, and we're always like, hey, what's the trend? What's the headline? What can we talk? Oh, look, you wouldn't believe this 10-1 angle. That's what people want. That's going to get clicks. That's going to get views. So, of course, anyone that has any trend, that it doesn't even matter if it's real or not. Just put it out there, okay, disprove me.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody cares. Nobody's going to spend the time to do that, but it's going to get you clicks. So, that's why this podcast is so good, Drew, why we've done it for so many years. Because it's not about blowing smoke up somebody's ass. It's not about getting clicks. If you listen to the Sportsmemo pod, you expect good information, and that's what we're trying to give you right now.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks for explaining that. We got 157, 158 heading to the max. Central Michigan at Northern Illinois. 44.5 the total. Northern Illinois, that defense has been pretty good, but you ready to lay 14 points at home with them, Teddy?
No, I don't want either one of these teams. But I'll tell you what, the one I want less is Central Michigan. Central's really young. When it comes to skill position talent, I think they're third in the country. They have no seniors. No, it's all underclassmen that are getting their first, run around the MAC. And Central's given Northern Illinois all kinds of trouble. This is a game that Northern Illinois absolutely has circled. Central in the opener, they're +4 at Kentucky. They barely cover. It's a 17-point dog. They lose by 15. Last week, you talk about a deflating loss, getting blown out on your home field by Kansas. They had 1 first down in the first half of that ball game, and Northern Illinois is coming to play here. So, when you talk about a team that with confidence or without it, and when you allow your opponent to snap a 46-game losing streak on the road against you, and they destroy you in the process, that's not exactly a confidence-inducing scenario. By any stretch of the imagination. Now, Bonamego has been a good road dog throughout his career with the Chips, but Northern Illinois is the better of these two teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if they show it.
Teddy, I got some numbers for you that are pretty legit here. Teddy covers 8-1, 89% plus 7.9 units on the year in college football. Is that one correct?
Yes, it is, and I'm mad at that because I should have had more. I've been seeing things real clear the first couple of weeks, so we'll see if we can hopefully do it again this week. And look, that's all rearview mirror stuff. Great start, but I'm only getting started, man. I have absolutely done my work in college football from day one this year, and I expect strong winning results to continue.
No, great stuff. Hats off to you, Teddy. Also 3-1 in the NFL. He's got his 20-star NFL big ticket up on sportsmemo.com. Make sure to check out sportsmemo.com for Teddy's packages, full season, monthly, weekly. We got it all at sportsmemo.com. We got one.
It's worth noting that 3-1 in the NFL is bullshit. Everyone that bet it went 4-0. But unfortunately, when I released, and the line moved like 10 minutes later, and then ended up winning off the line move. So I hope everyone at least pushed in that contest. I don't think anybody lost, and certainly not many bettors, but seeing things pretty good in the NFL so far as well. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff, Teddy. Keep it up, man. And seeing it clearly, both college and NFL. Teddy's a great choice for your betting needs. We got 159, 160, Georgia Southern, Clemson, 47.5. You can find a 48 out there as well. Looks like Clemson laying 33 at home. Teddy, any interest in betting this big number?
Yeah, no side total parlays in this one, huh? With Clemson laying 33 and the total 47.5. This game has been moved up to a 9 o'clock start. Georgia Southern has shown no ability to compete with quality squads. I worry about Clemson's mentality in this ball. Clemson was pretty good at smacking teams down last year, but now they got a QB shuffle going on. That's a little bit dicey. And next week, the conference opener. So here's your sandwich spot at A&M, home game against Georgia Southern, at Georgia Tech next week. That's certainly not an optimal spot. That being said, they're going to stop Georgia Southern from moving the football. So, what's the team total on Georgia Southern going to be? Less than a touchdown in this ballgame, and that's probably where it should be.
161, 162, New Mexico State. I'm sure there's a name for the rivalry. I don't know it. 4, New Mexico is laying on the road. We got 58 the total. Any interest in betting New Mexico State, Teddy?
Oh, well, this is another pick your poison kind of game right here. I mean, Doug Martin signs his contract extension, and then New Mexico State goes and gets smacked. 3 ball games. And look, it was the whole road was tough. There was no question about it. The first game against Wyoming, they got smacked around, and that was that. And they had the short week and had to go up to Minnesota, and they had another short week, had to go up to Utah State, and it was ugly. All 3 of those games flat out ugly. But at the end result of that, boom, all kinds of defenders going down. They got cluster injuries at linebacker right now. They got a key defensive back who's out. It's a really banged up football team. They've been annihilated 3 straight weeks, and I question their mentality here. But of course, New Mexico has no quarterback, and no quarterback is a bit of a statement. Teotihu's got a concussion. Teoti has got a concussion. He's out this week, and the new starter is going to be Sherian Jones, who I know very little about. Remember, the other guy, Colton Gerhart, he's out as well. So Jones looks like the 3rd choice for the Lobos, hence all the money coming in on the Aggies. But you don't make money in college football betting on bad teams. These look like 2 pretty bad teams. And in a rivalry game, I have very little interest in betting this one.
And it's called the Rio Grande rivalry, Teddy, just so you know.
I did not know that. Thank you.
All right, we got Tulane, UAB. Interesting one here. 4 Tulane laying on the road at UAB. 57 the total. Anything on this one, Teddy?
So prior to the season, I make my own power ratings, and I ask a couple of guys that I know to share. I share with a couple of guys. I'm not going to name names, but professional bettors. Legit professional bettors, not bullshit professional bettors. And the guys who I shared, one of the guys who I shared with had UAB, a way off market number on UAB. And I questioned him about it. He's like, yeah, last year was a mirage. This program's not where it's supposed to be. They have no depth. UAB's in trouble. They're wildly overvalued. And I said, it's just a mental note. Just one of those things. All right, because he had a bunch of teams that were way off market. And, I asked him about a lot of them. And then this was one that stood, when someone's got off market, why? What's the story? And then you start to look at, the UAB season so far. Savannah State, okay, 52-0, no big deal. The loss at Coastal Carolina, they were 9-point chalk in that game. All right, not that big a deal because Coastal Carolina annihilated, had another big win last night. They appear to be something of an undervalued commodity. But UAB, and certainly this number is saying, the markets don't really trust this team either. And, Tulane, we expect a good thing from Willie Fritz. We did. We said, all right, it's going to take, might take a couple years, but it's coming. They improved last year off the year before. Certainly, the game against Wake Forest in the opener, Tulane stood toe-to-toe with that team. They don't have any playmakers on offense. So they don't have the one guy that can get the quick strike touchdown. And UAB does, and that does concern me about the Tulane side. But from a fundamental standpoint, from a depth standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, the Green Wave are clearly the better of these two teams. I can understand why they're road chalk.
I agree with you. We got 165, 166 Duke at Baylor, 49 the total. Looks like Baylor laying 6 at home. We got quarterback injury for Duke here, Teddy. But is it enough to kind of buck the train that Duke's been early in the season?
So I've seen Duke play twice. I watched him play in the opener against Army, and I watched him again last week against Northwestern. That game I watched pretty closely.
Yeah, and if you've been betting them, you've been winning.
Well, Duke, I saw something last week that I didn't necessarily expect to see. Duke outclassed Northwestern. All right, Duke's defensive backs, Northwestern's receivers had no chance to get open. I mean, they really didn't. Offensively, I thought Duke's receivers were rock solid, real strong. But they lose the quarterback, Daniel Jones. That's huge. That's an impact injury. And, of course, the cornerback, the NFL prospect, Mark Gilbert, also out for Duke. And those are impact injuries. And if there's one guy you don't want to lose going against this Baylor squad, you don't want to lose guys out of your secondary. Jerry McDuffie also got hurt as well out of the secondary for Duke this week. So that's a major concern going against Baylor. That being said, I still don't know who Baylor is. Last year was such a disaster, and I know they just got past UTSA last week, beating UTSA by 17 in a game that pushed against the closing number. They might have got a half-point cover against the closing number. They didn't throttle that team. You know what I mean? We didn't see the ridiculous offensive numbers. This to me is I'm going to learn a lot about Baylor in this ballgame, and I think we learn a lot about Duke with the Daniel Jones injury. This is a watch and learn game, not a bet game for me. I'm looking forward to watching it though on FS1.
Yeah, interesting take there, Teddy. I agree with you. I think Duke was a little bit underrated just as far as their overall talent level. And David Cutcliffe, they're well coached as well. So just to see this number when it first came out, around it got eaten up. And I just think that I don't know. Maybe Baylor's getting a little too much respect, but we will see. A lot of eyeballs on it. A good learning game, like you said. 167, 168. Colorado State. Florida is next up. 58 the total. Looks like the Gators laying just about 3 touchdowns at home. Anything on the Rams-Gators, Teddy?
Well, the reports out of Gainesville this week have Dan Mullen not very happy. And if you watched the Kentucky game last week against, Kentucky there was nothing fraudulent about that. Kentucky was the better team. If you take the names off the uniforms, take the colors off the uniforms, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the athletes on the Kentucky side and the athletes on the Florida side. So, there may be some growing pains here for Mullen early on. I don't like Florida's QB play. I haven't been impressed with their skill position talent. There's not a ton to like about Florida right now, even with, we had all these returning starters. We got everyone back on the offensive line. Hasn't mattered so far. That being said, they're supposed to kill this team. Colorado State rises from the dead. Literally, they were down 25-7 at home the second half against Arkansas after losing to Hawaii and losing to Colorado, and it was, and then 25 unanswered in the second half of that ball game, and rallied to beat Arkansas, an SEC team, and now going on the road to face another SEC team. I don't love the spot for Colorado. I worry about them wearing down, and I know that defense is going to have their hands full this time around. It feels like a Florida spot, and from a point spread perspective standpoint, there's not a lot of love for the Florida Gators, although we are seeing money starting to trickle in on them over the last 24 hours or so. If you like Florida, I bet them sooner rather than later.
Teddy, next up, one that should be exciting. A lot of offensive firepower. Houston at Texas Tech. 1.5 now, so we got a flip favorite from Texas Tech opening around 1.5, to now Houston laying 1.5 on the road. There are a couple ones still out there. Total 70. I'm seeing 69.5, 69 in that range here, Teddy. So what's your opinion here with the Cougs and Red Raiders?
Well, the money's moving towards Houston because we have a quarterback injury for Texas Tech, McLean Carter, who is clearly the better option for the Red Raiders. He hurt his ankle. He's he's listed as questionable. I have not seen an update on him today, but I would expect we'll hear something before kickoff, one way or the other. But as of now, it doesn't look great for Carter to start at QB for the Red Raiders. And of course, when we talk about defenses, in theory, Houston's got one, and Texas Tech doesn't. Ed Oliver is real, and the Red Raider offensive line is dicey, and now they have injuries at quarterback. So you have an NFL defender blowing up a weak offensive line with a QB that's hurt. Yeah, you can understand why Houston is taking money in this ballgame, even though, situationally, well, Houston in revenge. They were 6.5-point chalk. They lost 27-24 against Texas Tech last year. The Red Raiders defense made enough stops in that ball game to get the job done. But of course, the total here sitting 69.5, 70. They're going to have to get more stops like that this year, which I'm not convinced. Houston's offense has impressed me the first couple of weeks. And don't be fooled by the box score numbers or the final score last week. Houston led Arizona 38-0, and the rest of the game was garbage time. And boy, they put a hurting on the Arizona offensive line. Khalil Tate was completely shut down. And certainly when you talk about facing an offense like that and then facing Texas Tech the next week, you've already prepped for a mobile QB. You already prepped for a spread offense, so that may work well in Houston's favor.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Teddy. Teddy, you take the first half against Rice in their first week, because I've watched, I believe, every snap Houston's take, and that first half against Rice, they kind of sleptwalked through, and then they turned it on. If that game had 10 more minutes, they would have covered that one, and then obviously kind of blowing out Arizona, like you said. Houston's put together some pretty good football outside of that first half in the first week, so it might be something in your experience. You've been doing this well for a long time now. Is that something that you would look for to kind of carry on here? Teams putting like an offensive performance like that together week after week?
One thing I like to do, okay, and you made a great point about the very first half of the very first game. Think about Michigan's first half at Notre Dame, or Duke's first half against Army, or what. I mean, a lot of teams have played a bad first half so far this season. It's not unique, and what you like to see is teams that didn't look great from the get-go week one, step it up after halftime, step it up in week two. Sometimes it can be residual value supporting those squads moving forward.
Well said. We got 171, 172. UTSA at Kansas State, 46.5 the total. KSU laying 21.5 at home.
Yeah, pick your poison here. UTSA, just got beat down at home by a team they cared about, and now they're on the road for a, relatively meaningless non-conference affair, a paycheck type game, and that's not one of my favorite spots. I'll just put it that way. And of course next week they have Texas State at home, a much more meaningful game than this one. But I mean, Kansas State's quarterback play so far, I don't know how many bad things I can say about it, but it was pretty inept last week. And obviously you're comparing Mississippi State against UTSA. You can't compare the two. But, Skylar Thompson has not impressed me throwing the football at all. And if you're going to cover 21.5, you better either be able to dominate teams on the ground, and Snyder's real good off a loss. How about this? And again, this is one of these ones. It's not my stat. I didn't double check it, but I got 36, 15, and 1 against the spread at home off a loss, including 5-1 in non-conference. But, that's a long sample size. The shorter sample size has been he's solid in this role, but you're not getting any point spread bargains with K-State. And nothing I've seen from that team out of 2 weeks worth of play has me interested in laying 21.5 with the Kansas State Wildcats.
I'll tell you, Teddy, we got a kind of sexy underdog here going on the road into the SEC with the North Texas Mean Green heading to Arkansas. This one totaled at 69. And now at Chris, which you explained earlier, kind of a leading indicator book, bigger bets taken at bookmaker for American-facing clients, just at 6.5, so under a touchdown here for the Conference USA team going into SEC West territory. This is a small number, Teddy. Is this too much respect for North Texas?
Boy, it stands out like a sore thumb on this card. I mean, and I don't know how your process works, Drew. The very first thing I do is I'll just go down all the lines to see what jumps. And boy, this one jumped,
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Arkansas 7. I'm like, what the hell happened in that second half against Colorado State? But there's an angle here that I didn't think about until I started doing some work on the game. Chad Morris, of course, is the Razorbacks head coach. Mm-hmm. Chad Morris, who spent several years at SMU, who North Texas faced every year and beat and had success against SMU. They've done fairly well at times against this offense, including 43-6 win. Way back. Now, Littrell against SMU wasn't as good. He lost 34-21 in the opener in 2016. That was kind of a turnover game. Last year, they gave up 54 to SMU, and now they got Arkansas. I say, all right, well, they know this defense. They've seen this defense, but they haven't stopped this defense, or this offense. I mean, the Arkansas offense. That being said, Arkansas's got Auburn next. They're off a bad loss to Colorado State, and I haven't seen a lot that makes me think they're excited about North Texas. And North Texas, they're coming. So North Texas they've been good dogs in SEC country, but we don't see them in this point spread range. Feels like a bargain on Arkansas. It really does, and that's the only way I could bet this one is to lay it with the Hogs. But this. I don't know if I get to the window with it, but that's the only way I can look. As Arkansas are past, especially laying less than a touchdown, it does feel cheap. Although the Mean Green, one thing about the Mean Green, they're big up front. They have a strong veteran offensive line, and of course, a veteran at QB. So maybe they hang, and maybe the back door's open. But Arkansas are nothing for me.
All right, Teddy. Well, we got one left here, and before we get to it, Teddy covers 8-1, 89% plus 7.9 units on the college football season. Obviously knows his stuff. If you use coupon code Teddy200, you'll get $200 off, and you can get the rest of his full season, college and NFL, for under a dime. That would be less than $900. Get you all the way through the Super Bowl / national championship. Use that promo code Teddy200. Teddy, last game up, 175-176, San Jose State at Oregon, 68 the total. Looks like the Ducks laying 41 at home. Interested in getting involved with this big number?
No, I'm not going to play this. I mean, look, again, I do not bet the very worst teams in college football. There's almost no circumstance you're going to find me taking 41 points, unless it's a clear, there's a clear reason to do that, and I've got none of that for San Jose. San Jose, this is a bottom feeder program. They are likely to be non-competitive in Brett Brennan's second year, just like they were in his first year. The step-up games last year at Texas, 56-0, at Utah, 54-16, at Utah State, 61-10. I don't know they get stops here. Oregon can name the score. And again, if you want to lay this type of price with the Ducks, I wouldn't, I'd rather have the Oregon side here than the San Jose side. But Oregon hasn't been covering numbers in this range. They haven't covered numbers in this range for years. And of course, first year coach and Cristobal and all that. I'm not convinced. I think the Oregon program has declined in a real way, and I'm not happy to it's been so much turmoil there since basically since Chip Kelly left, and certainly since Helfrich. You had Helfrich and then Taggart and then Cristobal. When you have three coaches in 3 years, that's not a program I'm excited about laying 41 points with. There's been enough attrition that it makes me worry what happens when the benches get emptied. So, no, it's not a game I'm going to play.
All right, Teddy, good stuff. Follow Teddy on Twitter at Teddy_covers, and obviously he knows his stuff in college football. The big run here to start the season. Great choice for your betting needs with his service, his premium plays. Teddy, anything you want to throw out before we shut this down?
Look, I appreciate the compliments. All that's rearview mirror, man. We got off to a good start. If you were able to run it, ride me, great. But it's not about what I just did. It's about what am I going to do. And looking forward to a strong card this weekend. NFL already locked and loaded in college football. Working on that right now. We'll have it up later in the day on Thursday, perhaps some ads on Friday morning as well. So you can get on board at sportsmemo.com. No muss, no fuss. And what'd you say, $200 off?
Yeah, $200 off, Teddy.
That's a good deal, man. What's that promo code? Teddy200. Use that at checkout.
Teddy200 is the promo code, and we'll have Teddy back on tomorrow for NFL, every game on the board. Next up, Rob Veno to finish out the college football card.